All right. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to have a fellow colleague, Microsoft fellow colleague, to kind of come out and present. We have André. André, over to you with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Setu. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. This session is going to be a very strange session because for me it's 8 o'clock in the morning and for you it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, almost 5. This session will be even more stranger when I show you my cat. So my cat has a very strange characteristic, which is every time I do an Azure session, my cat insists on participating. I'm not kidding. So I'll have my cat here showing up. We'll see what happens when we try to do some demos. And of course, let's get started. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will try to answer all of those questions as soon as I can. Anyway, let's get started and let's see what we have here. So first of all, you've seen my cat. The reason I have my company with this name is because of that cat. And of course, I've done a few interesting sessions, which are mostly cat themed or crazy themed in any case. So these are some of the sessions that I've done. And one of the sessions I hadn't done before was a Knight Rider session. And of course, this is very interesting for me because I was a very big fan when I was very young of that crazy talking car that jumped around the place. So this time I get to do a session which is focused on something that I liked when I went to primary school and things like that. So let's see what happens. So welcome to the session. This session is going to be build your own KITT with Azure Cognitive Services. And of course, KITT is that car that you see in the back. And if you ask me, why isn't the car on the floor? Because that car is not supposed to be on the floor. It's supposed to be jumping around. And of course, that's David Hasselhoff, or basically me with a different face. Of course, we are in Global AI Bootcamp, sadly not in person. So the last time I went to a Global AI Bootcamp was actually in person about a year ago. But this time, of course, because of many reasons that we know, it has to be remote. So let's see what happens. Maybe next time I will be able to go there. And I have to say that this is the first time I'm doing a session for Singapore. So really happy to be presenting this. But as I mentioned, hopefully next time I will do this in person. Okay, so my name is André Melancia. I'm from Portugal, specifically from Lisbon, next to the ocean. And of course, because everyone has been at home all of this time, it's very difficult to get a haircut. So I have a really nice haircut. But to do that, you have to use very advanced tools that you can have at home. And this is the technique that we use to get a haircut here. And as I've mentioned in previous times, this is the kind of haircut that you get alone. It's very difficult to actually do the haircut like this, but I've become an expert since then. Anyway, if you want to contact me, feel free to go to Andy.pt. All of my contacts are there, like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc. You can send me a courier pigeon if you want to. My cat will handle the message, but sadly there will be no reply because my cat will eat the courier pigeon. Okay, so anyway, just one of the slides that I've been presenting in the last few months, just to mention this before we actually get to the serious thing of the session. In the last few months, we've seen a lot of monoliths going around. This one, I think it's in Australia. This one is in Romania. This one here is in the United States. And of course, we know that the United States takes every advantage to make any kind of money, especially if it is McDonald's. And if you live in a country like mine, which is close to the ocean, you have monoliths like this. This is crazy enough, but seems to be true. Everyone has to have a monolith at this point. No idea why it is. Some people have toilet paper, some people have monoliths. It's very strange. Anyway, let's talk about cognitive services now, get a bit serious. And cognitive services are very simple. So if you haven't tried this before, or if you don't have Azure, this is perfectly okay. You'll still be able to follow the session. This is very simple to use. And I will try to explain how this works. So you can even use cognitive services even if you are not a developer. Some services like Power BI allow you to use some cognitive services directly without having to worry about the programming part that you have in the background. But let me try to explain how this works. So first of all, you have any kind of source of the requests. So this can be a cell phone, computer, tablet, whatever, even a car. We'll talk about cars, of course, but this can be anything you want, like a robot, anything you want, or a chip implanted in your head or your arm with a vaccination or something like that. Crazy theories, but we'll have a look at something like that. So the next part is that we are going to have our own server, and this can be, of course, on premises, but this probably is going to be on in the cloud. So let's just say Azure. And then, of course, you have all of the Azure services themselves. And the reason I have bats here is that the first time I prepared a session for cognitive services, this was in Transylvania. So I had a lot of bats and vampires and things like that. So the bats kind of stuck around since the session. Now, let's try to understand the flow of the information here. And the flow is actually very simple. So first of all, we have to understand that we have to ask something. Let's say it's a cell phone or a car. We have to ask a server that we have. Technically, we can ask Azure directly if you want to. That's perfectly okay. Let's say if it is a car, like the example we'll try to use here, that would be okay to ask it directly. But let's say that this is a cell phone, this is for clients, and the client shouldn't have access to the authentication directly in Azure. So you can contact a server in the middle or a service in the middle as well. So this can be something like Azure API management, or just your own web services, or any kind of protocol that you want to use for this kind of technique. So first of all, you ask something. Let's say it's image recognition, and you take a photo. You try to understand what it is. So you say that you want to do something like computer vision, and you say ask stuff, and then from there, that server will send with the required credentials for Azure. We'll send that over to Azure with some parameters, etc. We won't get into a lot of details for this, but basically to explain what kind of things you want to process in that image or in that video or in that audio or something like that. But then Azure processes everything. This is the part that you have to pay for, because you have to pay, it's fairly cheap. It's like €1 or €2 for every 1,000 images. So it's not expensive. It's something like that. Don't trust my word for this, but it's a similar value to that. But anyway, something happens inside of Azure, and then from that point on, you return the information to the server that you manage. And that server will typically receive that in JSON format, and then you have to process the information in some way. This is you being a developer and having to handle JSON contents, and then you send it over back to any kind of thing that you have here on the left. And then it will, of course, be used here on the destination. We'll see a few examples of this. This is just theory. I have 1 or 2 slides for theory. Everything else is practical, and you can do this even if you don't have an Azure account. You can try this out even during the session. You can try this out. So this is the first part. Now, of course, this is complicated because we would like to use cognitive services for something interesting like drones, because they can fly. But technically, if you use this car and use Turbo Boost, which is a feature that anyone that lived in the 80s would know, the cars also fly. So these were the original drones that we had in the 80s. It wasn't one of those flappy things. It was one of these car things that apparently was indestructible. Anyway, getting serious again. I've kind of proposed to do a session where we would take a car and try to figure out what kind of cognitive services we could use to spice up the car. And to do that, we need to add something which is not covered in the session, but it's not difficult. You need a bit of electronics, but you might also need some IoT concepts. And my recommendation would be to use Azure IoT, but you can use any other kind of IoT, any other kind of framework for IoT. That would be perfectly okay. Or do it all manually by yourself. That's perfectly perfectly fine. But in any case, let's assume that we have all of the IoT infrastructure. We have like something to communicate, like a computer, even a Raspberry Pi or something simple as that, so that we can communicate inside the car all the way up to the internet. Although some of these services for cognitive services will actually work directly on the IoT edge. So basically they can be processed directly inside of that device, that IoT device, if you want to use it directly. So let's try out to see some of the possible cognitive services we have available, and we'll come back to this and try to fill in all of the schematics for this. So first of all, important things, we start with Azure. Now, Azure is very simple, so you can go to azure.com. And when you get started, if you don't have an Azure account, it's very simple. You can just say, try Azure for free. That's simple enough. And the first time you try it, you say start for free here again. You fill in the necessary information, etc. And then you get a free account. That's simple enough. And for the first 30 days, you get something like the equivalent of this. This is 170 euros. This would be something like 150 pounds or 200 US dollars, something like that. And that would be for a whole month. But then you also have many other services for 12 months, like SQL databases, etc. So some of these are available for a few months, even virtual machines, things like that. So SQL databases. But then there are services which are available continuously, even after the 12 months. And some of these we'll actually talk about. So things like Azure Functions, which will always be free up to a certain limit. You also have things like Cosmos DB, which are a great idea to store some kind of information that you get. Let's say you do a lot of image processing in bulk. This is a great place to store it in Cosmos DB in a NoSQL solution. But if you prefer to use a SQL database, that's perfectly okay as well. And then somewhere down here, you will have to go to the full lists. It usually shows up here, but it's not listed here today for some reason. But you would get a lot of different cognitive services which have a free tier, and those are the ones I keep around in my Azure account so that I can use them continuously. Some of these I'll create as I need them, but mostly I'll have this for free. So you can try this out for free. There's no excuse. You can really use them completely for free, at least for the first months, and most of the cognitive services are actually available even after the first month. Now let's have a look at the actual cognitive services, and to do that we need to go to the Azure portal, as I mentioned, but then you can go here to the menu to AI machine learning, and then you can say cognitive services. I'll also mention the bots very briefly. Okay, I'll show you some bots, but you also have other things which are related that we'll not talk about today, but seems interesting to mention, things like machine learning. And if you want to do pure machine learning, that's perfectly okay. But cognitive services are great because even if you know nothing about machine learning, you can still use cognitive services because you are using them basically as web services. Okay. And because these web services are already trained, already handled for you, you don't have to worry about anything that you have to do. Things just simply work. Now I have a cat, and I did promise that as soon as I'll start to show things in Azure, she would come along. So this is completely normal. She's my companion in the Azure demos. And of course, you can have bot services. You also have other options for machine learning, such as Databricks. And yeah, I will have to put her here. That's okay. So I will do one demo with one hand and another hand just holding my cat. That's okay. So you also have things like Databricks and Azure Synapse Analytics, which is fairly new. So it went into general availability in November, which can also be used to do machine learning if you'd like. But in practical terms, I would probably use just the cognitive services. And this is the one we're, of course, going to focus on this session. But if you'd like to know more, of course, there are a lot of videos about cognitive services, about machine learning. And if you'd like to see them from some previous conferences that I did in the last month, you should be able to see them. If they're not published yet, they will be published at some point in time soon. Anyway, let's go to the cognitive services, and then we have a lot of different categories for the cognitive services. So let me just say goodbye to my cats. She will try to be on the floor at this point anyway. So let's go down a bit, and then you have 4 different types of cognitive services. There used to be one more, which is not listed here anymore, but it is now part of Bing APIs. You have things like text autocompletes and autocorrect, etc. This was actually very nice to do. You also have things like Azure Search and a few others, but these are not focused or not called cognitive services anymore. But it's still important to mention that those things exist. If you'd like to have a look at them there specifically, those are still very interesting. Now let's start with the vision APIs. And of course we have quite a few. So we have things like face APIs, computer vision. We also have for video as well. And then forms recognizer will see that as well. So I'll start with the forms recognizer, which is the very basic one. This is the least interesting one, so I'll try to build this up for a bit. And this one is very simple. So you start with a simple form, and this can be a PDF file, this can be, image, anything you want. You can digitize this, and suddenly you have something which is, bent to the side, something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but then you can still see the results. Let's say that this is an invoice, and in the invoice, you get a JSON content for all of this. I'm not going to give you all of the details. It's very boring, but you have this available. So if you'd like to try it, you can see the results immediately. But in the preview, you have information such as receipt type credit card, which makes sense. This is a category. But then you also have things like address. So the address is going to be here somewhere. Phone number, that's a phone number there. And then all of the details, time, etc. And then tip total. So by the way, let me just go down for a bit. You can't see this part. So here you have the tip and you have the total. So this will actually detect specifically what kind of things you need. Okay, you can parameterize this so that you can focus on invoices or tables or anything that you want which is specific to your company, your documents, your specific documents, and it will try to find things exactly there. Let me just go back to one of the first ones, which is this one. And in this one specifically, you have a table. Now, with the table, you have key value pairs in the beginning, before the table, although these will also show you the very end of this for all purposes, but then you have the actual table. Now, the actual table here, you see this as columns. This is very typical when you do things like machine learning, but in this case, there are some reasons why you use this as columns for optimizational purposes. And of course, you have all of the values here, and then you have invoice something. Let me try to zoom this for a bit. You have some invoice something here, and then of course you have some quantity here, 39, 40, etc., some prices, and then for the discounts here, although this looks a bit strange, but don't worry, this is okay, it's my zoom, but then you of course have some cells which are empty, and these are special codes to say that the cells are empty. So you can process any kind of information you receive as a piece of paper, and then put this into a database or anything you want. Even if it is handwritten, it will still work. Okay, now let's have a look at a few other things which are available. Let's start with the face. Face is one of my favorite ones, although I have to say it always gets my face specifically wrong for some reason, but as far as I can see, for most people this works okay. It's just calling me old for some reason. So anyway, the first one you get here, you actually have 3. You have face detection, which shows you details about a person, face verification, which compares 2 people, and then you have emotion recognition, etc., which is also a part of face detection if you want to consider it, but these are also separate APIs if you want to do them just for that. Now, with this one, I don't really trust the images here. These are all okay, but I don't really trust them. So I prefer to use my own images, if you don't mind. And of course, my images are a bit easier. So about a year and a half ago, this was in SQL Saturday in Lviv, in the Ukraine. We had a speaker room, which was technically a speaker bedroom. And basically, this was our speaker room, and we jumped into a bed to take some photos, and this was detected. All of these people were detected here. Of course, this is me. And I am here. I'm not sure which one I am at this moment. Wait a minute, I have to move to detection 1. By the way, detection 2 detects all of the faces, but detection 1 might not detect everyone. So there is one person here that did not get detected using version 1, basically because he's turning to the sides. Okay, so what you get here is, for me, I have 48, which is absurd. So at the time I was around, I don't know, 40 or something like that, so very different. Our friend Catalin says 44 here. He's like 10 years older than that, so it's completely wrong. Okay, but in most cases, this gets things right. Okay, please remember that the number of pixels that you see for my face and everyone's face is actually a small amount, so the quality is not going to be very good. If you have a very big face in terms of pixels, you will be able to see the face correctly. Okay, so anyway, you have a lot of information. So let's say male 31. And I'm not sure which is the first one. So the first one actually says male 44. So that's Catalin here. So I don't think anyone else is 44. Okay, we have more than one person 44. Okay, so wait a minute. This is different. Okay, so it's actually starting from the bottom this time. Okay, so you have information about rectangles where the face is, so that you can draw the faces. You have some attributes in terms of hair color. You have things such as smile, if everyone is smiling or not. Here they are, but we'll see a few differences later. Male, age 44, etc. And then if you have a mustache, yes or no. And clearly he does, although he doesn't show very well, he does have a mustache. And then you have not so much of a beard or sideburns or something like that, but a bit. And then in terms of emotion, you have quite a few bits of emotion, but only happiness here is at 100%. So this is always between 0 and 1, which corresponds to 100%. And in this case, this is, of course, everyone is happy. I'm not sure if people were drinking at the time. I have no idea, but people were mostly happy. This was a fun time. There was food, etc. These remote events don't have food. Anyway, you have a few more things like face landmarks. So you have each of the things like the eyes, the nose, the mouth, etc. So you have all of the landmarks for the face that you also have listed here. And then you have the next person. So this was Face ID something. This is the next Face ID, which is something else. Okay, so this is going to be the next person. I'm not sure which one it is, but let's assume this is from bottom up. Now this time we have Catalin, and we have crazy no mustache. Yeah, so it is him. Yeah, it is him. No glasses, and Jan actually had glasses here, so I'm not sure if I'm able to find it, but you do have some things in the bottom that actually say glasses at some point in time. I'm not getting. He's actually not being detected at the moment. Sorry, of course. But yeah, if you had glasses, if you had any kind of face characteristics, they would actually show up here. But of course, don't trust us for this. This photo could be manipulated or something like that. So we'll have a Trump photo, and of course, I'm gonna make fun of Trump. It's normal. Everyone makes fun of Trump. You can make fun of your own politicians if you'd like. Feel free to do that. You can try this with your family as well. You can try with photos of you, your family, your friends, etc. But let's try Trump. So first of all, it says that he is 59 years old. This is false. He is much older than that. But then again, we don't know when this photo was taken. This was already a few years ago, at least 3 or 4 years ago at the very minimum. So he was around 69 at the time, if it was 3 years ago. But this might even be older. I'm not sure. Okay, so you have male 59, and then you have things like color of hair blonde, but at the same time it's gray. The computer is very confused, and this explains a lot because he doesn't really have hair. It's a wig or something like that, so it's strange. But anyway, some things like emotion, anger. He's very angry, okay? Although because he actually has his eyes like this, if you go into the detail of the emotion API, if you want to use the emotion API, there is some surprise or fear or something like that because he's actually looking down somewhere to the bottom right. He is actually a bit afraid, so the system will actually detect that he is a bit afraid. but that's okay. So we have this Trump here, and of course Trump can be with a different attitude. By the way, I have tried with vampires. I did mention that I tried this in Transylvania initially, but vampires don't get detected, so that's fine, or zombies or whatever you want to call those. I've also tried with kittens. I have a cat, as you know, and the second time I presented this was in Dalmatia, in Croatia. So I did try cats as well. Doesn't work. It has to be actual faces. But if you want to detect cats, this will actually work on the next one. We'll see, which is on the which is going to be on the next one. Okay, which is computer vision. Okay, so I have a few more, even me, for all purposes, but I will skip that part until the next demo. Okay, so welcome as well, Priyanka. She's also here as well as Setu. So welcome both, and let's try a different one. So this is just detecting faces and details. Let's try face verification, and this requires comparing two people which might be completely different ages. And let's try this with Trump. So we had Trump before. Let's now try Happy Trump. And we know Happy Trump is going to be different. It's just happy, okay? And let's try Angry Trump again. Now let's do a comparison, and the confidence level is 83%. And this is good. Anything over 75%, something like that, maybe 80% will always be good and will kind of match the person, so it is okay. But let's try with a different person. Now let's try with a fake Trump, because I want to make sure that the Trump is actually fake. So I think this is from an American show, Saturday Night Live, I think. I'm not really sure. I don't get to see it, but something like that. And the best confidence, and you can tell that the images are almost very similar, and the confidence is 55%, which is quite good in trying to fake things. So this is very good makeup, this is very good work, but still not good enough to fool cognitive services. But still, we have a question, which is someone somewhere said that there was a woman that looked a lot like Trump, and they wanted to find out if they were related. Of course, these are not the same person, but are they related to each other? And the confidence level is actually 39%. So I'm going to say that they might be related in some way at some point in time, some family tree, they might be related. So one of the things I wanted to try that I haven't been able to try, I wanted to try this, is to try this with twins. So if you ever decide to try this with twins, put one next to the other, tell me what the percentage is going to be. That is something that I haven't tried yet, but I would still like to know. So if you do try that, please let me know. I would be happy to find out. Anyway, this is to verify two faces. You can do a lot more. You don't need to compare just two. You can compare many more. At present time, there's a limit of 64, something like that. But you can expand that and compare 64 at a time, and then expand this in a similar to a tree, and then compare all of these, 1,000 people, even more. So let's say you have 1,000 people to compare. You can compare 64 at a time, and then you get something like 16 different comparisons, and then the top 4 of each comparison, you compare it with each other, and you get something like 64 different results that are already the top results, and then you get to choose the best one to figure out which one of these people is the correct one. And you can use that to detect employees or something like that. It's very easy. By the way, important things, when you upload an image to the cloud, to Azure, it stays around for about a day, so 24 hours. So if you want to use it later on, you can still use it. You don't have to upload it every single time. So this makes it easy, but after 24 hours, and that's default. After 24 hours, it just goes away, which is okay. You have to upload it again, but it's still, hopefully it makes sense. Anyway, emotion recognition. We saw emotions as well. You have quite a few bits of emotion, very similar to the previous one, but these were a special API which they were actually going to discontinue, but for some reason it's still there after 2 or 3 years. So, you can use it if you want to. This actually has better quality than the other one, but for some technical reason, they haven't discontinued it yet, but you can still use both. Okay, so this is face recognition. Now let's try computer vision, which is slightly different. Now with computer vision, this is slightly different. Now, with computer vision, you have images, and I do have images that I don't trust, by the way. I don't trust these because if you see these are things like a train or a subway, and then you have things like subway train, you have things like going down, you have a caption saying people waiting at the train station. This is perfectly true, by the way, but now let's try to find some changes. By the way, let me just mention that there might be a problem with these, so let's say uploads. There was a bug with this interface for some reason. I had some problems demoing this in the past. It doesn't mean that the cognitive services don't work. They do work. It's just that this interface was changed in the last few months and it has some bugs. But let's try it anyway. So let's say analyze image. Let's go to browse. And because I want to make sure that I don't fake this, I will actually use my own image in front of the Eiffel Tower. Okay, and this was a few years ago, so they're gonna say I'm very old, but still, this was something like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was very cold. It was January, like 3-4 years ago. It was very cold. That's why I look like this. But if you have a look, you have something that says a man wearing a costume with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Confidence level only 44 because it is a bit dark, but the costume part, of course, is wrong. But this was really cold, so this is the reason I look like this. Anyway, tower, confidence 86%, sky also there. This is at night, so you might have some other captions at some point in time that actually say night. In the past, I used to see something like this. Anyway, black and white, if it has adult content or not. If it is gory, so we can try a gory one, which is like the gory, that means it's, like the zombie one, which is, it looks bad, okay? And if it is racy, it's not the same as adult content, but racy would mean that it would not be politically correct, let's call it like that, okay? But anyway, you have some other informations that you can take from this, some categories, in this case buildings, etc. You can use this to categorize things. And now I have age for myself. I have age of only 2 years old. By the way, up to 5 years old, this is very difficult to determine, but by that time I was a bit older, so it doesn't count. But they don't get to see all of my face. Plus it was really cold, so my face is weird, or I'm just fat, I'm not sure, one of the two. So it wasn't possible to properly detect my face. If it is a kid up to 5 years old, this is difficult. If it is an older person, older than, let's say, 65, 70 years old, it's going to be very difficult to determine the correct age from that point on. Okay, but any other age in the middle should be okay. For some reason, except for me, they always get me wrong for some strange reason. But if you try this for yourself, it's going to get plus or minus 2 or 3 years of difference, so it should be okay. Just make sure that the age that you try is going to be the age of that photo, not your current age, of course, right? Anyway, let's try with a different one. So let's try analyze an image, but let's try the ugly one of the vampire. Okay, so let's try the vampire now. And then the gory parts, it is true that you have a gory status, which is a scary kind of photo of 99%. Okay, and of course, if you have browse, you can get, let me try something different. So let me try Borat this time. And this will actually tell you a few more interesting things about this. So of course, all of these are false. These are okay. But then you have age 41. I'm not sure if this is true, by the way. I haven't checked. I have no idea when this photo was taken. But you have a lot of information. So necktie, man wearing suits, etc. And then you have, let's see if I can find it, human face, etc. But then you have a really nice text that says Sacha Baron Cohen wearing a suit and tie, smiling at the camera. This is the correct actor. This is an actor, of course, playing a character. But this is the correct actor, so this will actually get well detected. If you try Trump, this will work as well. If you try, let's say, I have tried this before. Not sure if this is going to work. So if you've seen films like Love Actually with with a lot of famous people. I keep suddenly I forgot the name. Sorry, but one of the persons is Lucia Muniz, and she's actually well detected. Now we can try to find out her age. So if you go to Wikipedia, you can figure out when the film was taken, assuming that this is from that film, of course. And then if this is her correct age at the time, she is much older now. She is older than me, I'm sure, but this might be a very older image of her, so I'm not sure. Anyway, one more. So I want to get one more, and we'll try here for Portugal. And we have something called Torre de Belém, which is very famous. We have foods close by, which is also from called pastéis de Belém, which is pastry, which is very good. And here they actually detect that this is Belém Tower in the background. So this is the Belém Tower, so it actually detects it okay. If you try any of the other ones, it will also detect other things. So I have the Bucharest parts, I have a few others, those will be detected okay, so this is not a problem. Anyway, one of the next ones that I want to try without image is read texts. Okay, recognize celebrity, we can see that this works even with the other one, but let's try to read texts, and I'm gonna get an image of a license plate. And we'll see why this is relevant. So the license plate is actually correct here. This is a Portuguese license plate. Number 4 here because it's on top, 6 because it's in the bottom, P is for Portugal, and then the detail here is actually kind of incorrect because this is the original one is a D, M, and V, okay? Actually DGV, okay? And the problem is that even if you try to read it, it looks like an O. So even a human would not read it correctly. So that's okay. These are usually very small letters. But from a practical point of view, this actually detected okay. And then it has boxes to say where number 04 is and tells you exactly what pixels it is in, so you can have rectangles drawn around it. But I want to show you just one more, very quickly one more. So if you are going after a car, like this one, and if you're after a car, you actually get to see things which I cannot see from the naked eye. I had to zoom to figure out that this was correct. But in the bottom of the license plate, so let's go here. In the bottom of the license plate, you actually have things here that said birthplace of aviation. It's so small, but still it's well detected here. Plus the license plate, etc., which is easy. Last one, just to mention one last one, okay, which is going to be the Dalmatian dogs. Okay, so yeah, of course this is not. You've got a spot there. Okay, now they're actually detecting the spot, not the analyze image, but that's okay. Anyway, let's go back for a bit, and of course you have computer vision. Let me just mention what custom vision is going to be. This one you have to fill in a lot of images. So let's say you are detecting mugs, so you have to take photos of a lot of different mugs, and then if you take photos of tables like this one, they will ignore everything on the table and just focus on the mugs. You have a button that says, first of all, you upload the images, then you have a button that says train and then publish, and this will work automatically. It's like doing machine learning, but it's basically done as a service already, so it's very simple. You don't have to do any code, you just upload the images. So that means that any user, without even being in IT, can actually do something like that. Finally, we have the video indexer. Let me just show you this very, very quickly. Okay. By the way, I will actually try to go to this one and try to see this in a different logic. Okay, let me just go to this one directly, which I think is going to be very easy if I have it, of course. So let me go to this one directly, because I will have to find a lot of videos. You can log in with any account. Oh, okay, that's a problem. So maybe this was my video. Okay. But so I log in with an account, something, any account like Office 365 accounts, okay. And then you have some samples, and then these samples, it does take a bit of time to detect, but let's say builds. I think it's build 2016. If it's not, it's something very similar. This is the one I usually present about because it has a lot of rich things in it. Builds, wait a minute. It's easier like this. Okay, so this is the one built 2016. And this one, what do you have here? First of all, let me just zoom this so we can see a bit more. So I'm going to stop the video. The video is at almost 3 hours, something like that. I'm going to stop the video, but I will explain to you what's actually happening.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so this is Scott Guthrie, and Scott Guthrie, during the time of the video, which is going to be this timeline here as well, is going to show up until halfway through the session. So if you jump into a part that has a black marker here, something like this,
Started with IoT.
it's still the same guy. So in terms of voice, it's still the same guy. So you have a bit more, still the same guy.
Set of data analytic.
Okay, and then you have a different person, which is after him and works here, Kilu, and then you have Yina, which is in some of these places as well. So if you go here, she's actually here.
I'm gonna just
And of course, you have more. Feel free to try it. You can upload your own videos and try this by yourself. This actually works well. It's very good in English, but I have tried to upload videos in Portuguese, and they were okay to detect people. Not so much detect the labels that you see here, but people, yes. So you have a lot of different topics like companies, like business, mobile operating systems, etc. So if you jump into one of these, they will actually talk about this. By the way, this is not very easy. My screen, so that I can project to you, doesn't have that much of a definition. But if you have a bigger screen like Full HD, these you are able to press this with good precision. Otherwise, each of these pixels is almost about 5 minutes. So to actually find it, it's difficult. So you have things like labels. There are labels like human faces, clothing. Somewhere down here you have cats, you have dogs. So these are fun gigs, driving. So let's try driving. No, dog. Let's try dog. Actually, the dog is very difficult to find. I can never find it correctly, but let's risk it anyway.
5+ years later, we've taken that.
There's going to be a dog here somewhere. Let me remove the sounds. So there's going to be a dog here somewhere. It's not him. Trust me, it's not him. There's an actual dog. But with so much of a face, it could be confusing. But no, it's not him. There's actually a dog showing up here at some point in time. It is close to him, by the way. But let's not spend more time actually trying to find it. You can try this for yourself. There's actually a fish here as well, if you want to have a look. Then you have locations like San Francisco, etc., Melbourne. I'm not sure if this is going to show you something interesting, but it's a bit difficult. Now, the next one is interesting because you have things like emotions. And the interesting emotions are the ones like fear. Fear here, in this case, she is actually afraid because there's some point in time that she looks down. She actually rolls her eyes because someone is telling her something like, you have to finish your session, something like that. Please hurry up, and panic. Okay, so there's some fear there. There's also some sadness. Not sure why, but there's also some anger. Also not sure why, but you will be able to see it. You'll also be able to see the scenes. Plus, you'll also be able to see the timeline with all of the texts that goes around, and this can be cycling throughout all of the text if you want to. So you get all of this information being processed in the video indexer in a very easy way. So hopefully you'll be able to use this. Of course, for all of the tools that I'll talk about today, this is going to be the most expensive one, but still you have some free tries that you, if you'd like, some of these are actually free. Okay. Anyway, let's go back to our slides very quickly for a minute before we continue. So things that you can do in a car. So first of all, let's say you have, the thing to open the door, the handle to open the door. You can have some camera that does face detection and refuses with a red LED there, refuses to open the door if you're not valid. So face detection to detect if there's a personal verification to verify if that's the right person or not. And then you have things like in the front and in the back, you might have some cameras so that you are able to detect objects using the computer vision that we saw before. You can detect license plates, you can detect text in the cars, you can detect traffic signs, things like that. You also have the video indexer. So let's say you are spying things, and if you remember the series, they will actually have some kind of big brother zoom thing where they can actually find things inside of a building and hear things inside. So you can actually use things like video indexer to figure out which people are using which things when they are speaking, etc. You would actually be able to do all of that using video indexer. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And the next one is going to be to talk about a thing like speech. So of course we have speech to text and text to speech. This is not new. I'm not going to demo this. This is very obvious, but feel free to try it. There are some demos in the website so you can try it, but I will try speech translation. Okay, I'm not sure if this is going to work. I have more than one microphone in my computer, but I'm not sure if that is going to like me doing that. So I will try source language, let's say Portuguese, and then I will try the target language of English. Okay, so I will try to speak. Olá a todos no mundo inteiro. Como é que está tudo? And that's exactly what I said. Hello, everyone in the whole world, something like that. And how's everything, etc. So yeah, this is exactly the correct one. And anyone that speaks Portuguese can actually confirm. So you can do this and recognize text and in real time do speech translation. There's also something called Translator. .microsoft.com. I don't have the time to demo this. I will need to show you other things as well. But basically, you can start a conversation. You log in with something, and then in that conversation, you join more people. You have more people join in, and then all of these people have their own language. Some bug. Okay. Yeah, I have a problem with cookies in this browser specifically. That's okay. It's my fault. But you should log in. They will give you a code, so that conversation code, and then you log in. You specify your language. You'll only be speaking or writing in your language, but you will see all of the answers for everyone else also in your language, no matter what language they start with. Okay, so this is also very interesting. Anyway, let's try the next one. Okay, so let me just get rid of some windows so that we have some free space. And of course, you have also something called speaker recognition, which is basically you upload a lot of samples of voice patterns of people speaking, basically. You upload them to the cloud, and then every time someone else speaks, you will actually be able to detect it. Now, you also have things like language, and language gets interesting. So, of course, you have the translator, and translator is basically your Bing translator. And you know that this works, so this is okay. This works really well. Bing translator is actually quite good if you like Klingon. Okay, but I can tell you that I've been to a lot of different countries, and I've used translator, both Bing Translator and Google Translate, and I can tell you that Bing is actually much better. Okay, there are some things that Google does best. We know this, okay? But in terms of translation, unless you prefer Latin, which no one uses, Bing is going to be much better, okay? Plus, you can do Klingon, which everyone wants. Anyway, you also have something called the Immersive Reader. I'm going to do this very quickly. So the Immersive Reader is something that you can have if you have people with disability, or if you are doing this for kids or something like that need to start learning these things, or if they have this can be a visual disability, or this can be a learning disability as well. They can actually learn by separating these, like verbs and things like that. All of these are separated, and by syllables and things like that. So you can integrate this with your own application if you'd like. Okay, this can be useful if you need to take that into account. Any kind of demographics that requires a better immersive reader. Anyway, let's mention Q&A Maker and language understanding. These are necessary for bots. Okay, and Q&A Maker is required if you'd like to do a series of just questions, which are standards, and then you have for each question you can have an answer. Although for each answer you might have more than one different question. question that gets you the same answer. That's perfectly okay. And to do this is basically two columns: questions here, answers there. And then based on this, they use machine learning to detect which one it is. There's also a lot of magic in Q&A Maker, in which you can take all of the questions and answers. You don't have to upload them yourself manually. You can get them from CSV, from Excel. You can even get them from web pages or even PDFs or Word documents, and they will actually detect where the questions are, where the answers are, or you can just scan things. Things will just work, okay? And that's the big magic that's on Q&A Maker. It's not so much the questions and answers, it's how to actually get them. For me, that's magical. But then you have language understanding services, which is used on bots. Okay, and to use that in bots, you can do things like ask questions. So let's say that this is some IoT device. Things like you have the smartwatch. The first smartwatch was from the 80s, of course. This was in Knight Rider, and you had this. Please come pick me up, KITT, pick me up, or something like that. But then here you can do a lot of things like switch all lights to green, and then you have the information. By the way, you need to program some of these things. You need to program something called intents, which are basically your actions. In this case, it's turn on. It can be turn off. In this case, it's turn off or all off in this case. But then you have some parameters which are your entities. In this case, you have an entity which is color green. So entity is going to be entity is going to be green, but it's of type color. But you also have table light here. So you're going to have a type light, entity table. So you have different entities. You can have more than one. So you have an entity called light type, which is the floor light, which is this one. But then you have a type color, and it's going to be green. It could be a different color. So if I say yellow, it should actually work as well. So it does turn to yellow, so it's okay. And you can detect all of this in JSON files. And this is going to be the thing that we are going to use for things like bots, etc. And this is the magic that makes the bots intelligent. The bot itself, using the bot framework, is not very intelligent. This is what makes the bot intelligent. This is the important part. Anyway, you also have things like text analytics, but we'll get to that just in a second. I also want to show you the bots. So let me just show you a bot first. Okay. By the way, to access all of these things, all you have to do is to go to the Azure portal in portal.azure.com and then try to load things like the face cognitive services. So you can just say create a resource, and then you can just say I want the face resource here, face, or I want the some of them are usually just saying cognitive services, things like computer vision, or just generically cognitive services, translator, etc. You actually have quite a bit of this, which you can try if you want to. Anyway, we also have bots, and to do that, you search for something called a web app bots. Okay, web app bots. And because this takes about 5 minutes to load, I've actually loaded one already. So I have my bot here as well. And this bot, you can go here to test in web chats. Please be careful because the browser needs to accept third-party cookies for this specific window for testing to actually work. Okay. So let's say you get the bot. So the bot has loaded. This, if you use channels which are different, you can actually have this as the bots that you see when they pop up when you go to a page on Facebook or on Teams or on Slack or a lot of others like Skype as well. Okay. And here you can just say, let's say, book flights. And then where would you like to travel to? Singapore. Where are you traveling from? Let's say right here. Okay. Well, it's a place. Wait a minute. Okay. When would you like to travel? Yesterday. I really love to do this. Of course, you need to program a boundary so that this works, but this is yesterday, and this is okay. So it detected that this was yesterday. You can also say things like tomorrow and things like that. So this will also work. But you can just confirm. You say yes. And things just work. Anyway, let me just show you one last one before we go. Okay, and I do have a question. I will answer that question just in a bit. Okay, so wait a minute, not this one. This one. Okay, and you have something called text analytics. okay? And text analytics are basically things where you can analyze the content of images. So I'll show you this, as we don't have that much time. I will show you this, but you can try this manually if you'd like. And I can do this in a different session with a bit more detail. But basically here you have a lot of different phrases, and all of these phrases have some positive or negative content. So I'm happy, I'm sad, and here the only complaint I have, the food didn't come fast enough. Now this is the 14% for the whole document, which corresponds not to the last one, but one before the last sentence, which is negative. So there's a negative remark there. But then of course you have a lot of different things like a location, you have a person type, you have a person, you have a kitchen, which is structural. It's not the same as a location, addresses, phone numbers, and then you have emails and things like that. So all of these personal identifiable information, etc., you can actually use this, and in the JSON file they will actually tell you exactly where in the text it's going to be in the position X, position 1 to 3 with the size of something in terms of number of characters. So this is going to be very easy for you to detect all of these things. And then if you need to replace it, if you need to censor the name of the person for privacy reasons, you can do that very easily. Now, we don't have that much time to do this. There's too many cognitive services for us to be able to detect everything, but you can go and create a text analytics service, and then you go here to keys, get the key here, okay? So you need to get the key from here, and then you can just go to a quick start and then go to the API console. Version 2 guarantees more languages other than English. Version 3 currently it's only English. Let me just try one very quick one for sentiments, okay? You can do detect language, etc., but let's try one for sentiments, and then let's say West Europe, okay, which is the place where I have this currently stored. But then I will need to copy paste the key. So I've done this before, by the way, it's not new. I do have that key which was taken from that address, and then I can just say, oh look, let's run this, and I'm gonna add something to this. As soon as I try some code, my cat will show up. So let me add some code, which is going to be 3. So this is 4, this is 5. This is going to be a positive 1. This is going to be a negative 1. Okay. And then we can go down here and just say sends. And the result of 4 is going to be positive. The result of 5, well, it's not going to be negative. It's going to be kind of neutral, okay? The Pentagon admitted there are UFOs and nobody cared. There's positive things here and negative things here, so that's why it's probably going to be neutral. I didn't really make things very negative. And let's say everybody hated it. Okay, wait a minute. Hated it, and everybody hated it. Okay, so if I do that, if I say send, now this is going to be negative. 13%, that's definitely negative, okay? Okay, so one more after this. So let's go back for a bit. And now that I'm here, where can we use this kind of things? Well, to speech to text, text to speech, that's obvious. Web App Bot is a great place for you to do some workflows into all of the things that you can do. That work, you saw a workflow of booking a flight for an airplane or something like that. Language understanding services, the Luis, is actually the part that makes everything intelligence. Or alternatively, you can use the Q&A maker for very simple bots which just answer very predefined questions. You can also do text analytics, as I mentioned, to detect languages, to do sentiment analysis, to detect information about people, etc. You can also use the translator, or you can even use the translator.microsoft.com as well, which is great for conference calling with different languages. But you also have, and this is the last cognitive services that I wanted to show you. We are running a bit out of time, by the way. So these cognitive services are the last ones for decision. And in this case, you have things like anomaly detection, and you have things like anomaly detection are easy. So instead of using machine learning, you just upload the information, all of the metrics that you have here, the blue part here, and then they consider that the light blue part is going to be acceptable. Every time you have an anomaly, they will actually detect this, but you don't need to use machine learning. This is much simpler than that, okay? For the metrics advisor, it's similar logic, okay, but slightly different. Let's say you have some trends like in stocks or something like that, and then every time the trend goes to something slightly different, it will actually be detected there, so you can do some action based on things being slightly different with the metrics advisor. Finally, we have things like Personalizer, which allows you to, inside your own app, to do some personalization and detects what kind of trends you do in terms of usage, etc. So this is very interesting. And finally, we have the Content Moderator, which allows you to use, and let me show you this. So let's say review image. I have an image here, and I do apologize for running a bit late, but let's, oh, okay. So I need to refresh probably. Okay. Okay, so there's a bug here. Okay, I'll probably have to log in again, so I will ignore this. But basically, the content moderator, just to explain this, is something where you can detect some text or image or videos, and then you can verify if things have personal identifiable information, if they have insults, if they have any kind of words which should be censored, etc. So you can use content moderator on websites or on your applications to handle that. Okay, so before we go, let me just finish with a bit of slides and then answer questions. So of course you can have anomaly detection and metrics advisor for some of these things. And then finally, of course, you can have the personalizer to make things nice for you. Let me answer some of these questions, but let me show you the last slide first, okay? I will answer all of these questions at this moment, but let me just show you the last slide first because it's over time, so I have to eject myself from here, but I will answer all of these questions first. And the questions are, first question, use Louise, it seems a bit messy programming after sometimes. Yes, if you make it very complicated, there's going to be a lot of things there, but you can divide that into chunks. You can even save those chunks outside instead of programming all of that in the studio or whatever, the interface, whatever you want to call it. You can store that in a database, for instance, and then organize that in whatever way you'd like, and then just upload that every time you need it. Okay, there's one possible way. Text analytics, way we can improve the result given back by way of feedback loop. So sadly, no, there's no possibility of retraining most of these cognitive services except custom vision, basically because these are services which are platform as a service. These are already done. If you'd like to do this with retraining, you will have to use actual machine learning, but you can use Azure machine learning or something like that to handle things using Python, using R, using ML.NET, something like that. Okay, and the last questions. Cognitive services are wonderful. Yes, they are very fun. When you use complex use cases, these are actually very good and scalable. For faces, these are, you cannot match any of these faces in any other way. These are actually the best, okay? Because if you have to train the faces yourself, that's just going to be crazy work for you. For text analytics, you can improve text analytics if you'd like, but still, these are quite good and they work in a lot of different languages. So I'm not sure what the current language number is, but some years ago, this was something like 12. Now I think that there are 60 languages in some of the cognitive services, so definitely recommend it. Anyway, I don't have any more questions here, and I am completely over time. I do apologize for this, and especially I do apologize for the next speaker. But I want to thank you all for being here and seeing the session. Feel free to contact me on social network. Just go to Andy.pt, and you have the contacts for all of the social networks if you'd like to ask me some questions. And first of all, I would like to thank you all for being here, and finally thank Priyanka and also Setu for inviting me to this session. And thank you everyone here. So thank you very much.
We are also going to see you tomorrow, right? So
oh yeah, by the way, yes, I'm gonna be tomorrow. Yes, for a workshop on cognitive services, machine learning. So we'll try to see this in a more detailed way. Okay, so some of the things we saw today, we'll try to talk about them tomorrow. Some of these with a bit more detail, like actually using codes. Okay, we don't have time to do this today, otherwise we wouldn't be able to see all of these things. But tomorrow we will try some of this using codes. Okay, so feel free to join us tomorrow. I'm not sure what the exact time is. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in my time.
yeah, Singapore time it's about 1 p.m. So we will make sure that you guys join in. And again, I'll be there to moderate the session. So and help Andy through his workshop. Maybe I'll learn some new cool tricks from you, Andy. All
Okay,
right.
thank you very much for everything. Okay, so let's go on to the next speaker because we are already running late. But have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll be able to see you tomorrow as well. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.